Okay, so welcome to the Harbor Area Recreation and Sim Park Public Safety Town Hall. This town hall is hosted by Northwest Neighborhood Council. And the events that happened July 24, 2022, Peck Park alerted us to a concern about park safety permitting and overall enforcement. Our goal with this town hall is to be able to move forward with awareness and safer protocols in place for the future of our parks in our harbor communities. It will take dedication and work from all of us to ensure the safety of our parks. Our mission when we began to prepare for this town hall was that we would be grounded in the precept that Northwest San Pedro Neighborhood Council wants to work in collaboration with the city, Los Angeles departments and stakeholders. The primary goal of this town hall is to keep our community safe by putting in place processes that will provide a safe environment for members of the public to enjoy our parks with the knowledge that their safety is paramount. So Ray Regalado, our Northwest San Pedro Neighborhood Council president, is going to say something.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for all for being here today, and I truly appreciate the fact that on a fall evening, instead of going out and mowing the lawn and things like that, that you're actually here with us tonight. So with that said, let me just say a couple of things here. On July 24th, a horrific incident took place at a San Pedro local park. Reports indicated that 2 individuals were killed and 7 others were injured. When the many 911 calls flooded the emergency lines, our public safety heroes responded in force. LAPD, LAFD, LASD, well, I should say, for those people who don't know who LASD is, it's Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. And I understand that we even had a contingent of Long Beach PD respondents, I'm hoping I'm wrong, responded to bring about peace and to help the wounded. I would like to thank our first responders who cast their own safety and concerns aside to care for the victims of this incident. All of you, thank you all so much for being here and taking care of our community. And I would like to not forget the park personnel who were on duty that day. Thank you also very much for being there and being part of this community. Over the next hours and days, rumors flew through social media and from neighbor to neighbor, giving a bent view as to what happened and who was to blame. I want to share my appreciation to LAPD and Councilmember Buscaino for providing public update meetings and media releases to quell the fear because of wrong information and instill confidence in the community that all hands were on board in investigating the violence. Let me be very clear, the information shared was instrumental in providing our community with the knowledge that the perpetrators will be brought to justice. I want to stop here and extend the condolences of the community to the families who lost loved ones or suffered injury in this horrific act. This is not what San Pedro is about. This is not what our harbor community is about. Today, Northwest San Pedro Neighborhood Council is holding a town hall to look at the incident and see how we as a community can gain insight as to how this incident could have been to a certain degree avoided, and how as a community we can partner to minimize the chances of this happening again. I want to thank the committee members who you will see and listen to today, who put this event together and express the desire that we listen, reflect, and have respectful dialogue as we move forward tonight. I would like to introduce our meeting facilitator and the chair of our Public Safety Committee, Melanie, who you've heard from before. So Melanie, take it away. Thank you for the opportunity to let me say a few words.
Thank you, Ray. So our panelists tonight, unfortunately, an hour before the event was to start, I received an email from the head of Rec and Park, Jimmy Kim, that he would not be attending tonight, which is kind of unfortunate because he is our big decision maker for Rec and Park. The other panelists that we have here tonight are Paul Armour representing LAPD, Dan Dedman from Pacific Region, Rec and Park. Officer Manlove, I see in the background. Is that him?
That's me.
And he's our communications officer. And as well as Joe Losarelli, I think is having some issues trying to get on, but he's hopefully going to be attending here shortly. And then
Sorry, you can check. He was gonna log in as an attendee.
okay,
And then if you want to check and see if he's there.
alrighty. And then from Northwest San Pedro Neighborhood Council, we have Chris Valier, Angela Sumner, John Barbera, and myself as moderator, Melanie, and Lebrecht. And then also our timekeeper tonight is Vic Christensen, who is on our Northwest San Pedro Neighborhood Council board. And Lydia Grant is our minute taker. I'd also like to take this moment to thank our special guests that we invited to attend, and that being Michael Signorelli from Peck Park, Tim McCoster, a candidate for CD15, our also Hunter Chase from Random Links, and Octaviano Rios from Empower LA. With that being said, we'll move on to the town hall format. And let me see if Joe is in.
I don't see him yet.
I don't see him in attendees. So the town hall format, as you see the agenda before you. With that, for our people that are joining via phone or anything, for everyone listening to our town hall, the meeting timekeeper will keep everyone muted. All attendees will unmute when they're called upon to comment. For everyone listening to our, if you are calling by phone, you need to press 9 to speak. If you use webinar number to log in, you will raise hand feature to speak and be called on. If you do not see the raise hand feature, hit escape and go full screen to see the raise hand option. During the meeting tonight, we will discuss the items listed on the meeting agenda in numerical order. There will be public comment for 10 minutes after each agenda item, 1 minute per speaker. If you want to make a public comment and you are attending by computer, click the raised hand option in the Zoom window. If you are attending by phone, you will need to press *9 on the dial pad. With that being said, this starts our town hall. We'll hear from LAPD on an update of the incident on July 24th, 2022.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for inviting me here this evening. My name is Paul Ulmer. I'm a senior lead officer for Northwest San Pedro. My area covers the area of Peck Park, in which there was a shooting back in the end of July. Before this meeting started, I reached out and got a call back from the investigating officer from South Bureau Homicide. The only public information that he provided to me that I could speak about is that he is optimistic about the progression of this investigation, and it is moving forward.
Okay, so we'll open it up for public comment for 10 minutes. Any public comment? Okay, timekeeper. Alrighty, Diana name.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what that means or what you said, Paul. Last I had heard, they had arrested, I think, 3 suspects, and then they had let them go. Have they rearrested anyone? What's the actual status?
So from what the investigative officer told me, we did discuss the fact that there was 4 people of interest that were arrested, some released. However, regardless of that fact, The investigation is still progressing, and he's optimistic of more arrests.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any more comments? Okay, next on the agenda, then we'll move on, is the CD15 working group update. They were having problems scheduling somebody to show up. I got a last minute email also from them. So we'll move on that agenda presentation and move on to LAPD presentation. So you're up again, Paul and Sergeant Manlow. Paul?
I'm sorry, go ahead and repeat that.
You guys are up because CD15 didn't.
Okay,
show.
so we're skipping to agenda number 3.
Yes.
Okay, so there's been a lot of questions during the emergency town hall meetings for Peck Park. And the subsequent follow-up meetings during the brainstorming for how we can improve security in the park and moving forward. A lot of questions of the mechanisms and the logistics on how the person who reports a problem ends up having an officer respond. And one of those is, well, we'll talk about priority of calls. There's three priorities. There's 0 priority non-coded call, code 2 call, which is a priority. Code 3 is the highest priority. That's an emergency response, lights and sirens. Every stakeholder location, whether it be a library, beach, park, etc., those are all code 2 calls. They're all prioritized regardless. There's never a non-coded call, which basically means that an officer under a certain amount of time has to, a unit, 2 officers has to be assigned that call, and they shall respond to it, as opposed to a non-coded call, which are low priority, loud radio, for example, that's non-coded, so that's at the lowest priority. I know that another question was, what would you recommend? A lot of people ask me, what would you recommend doing if I were to, a stakeholder was to call and report a problem at the park, a crime or a potential crime in progress. So when they call, again, it's prioritized. You have to paint the picture. You have to remember that the dispatch, they aren't there, they can't see anything. So you really have to provide a lot of details to that dispatcher so they can relay that information to both, say, our division, Harbor Division, and Security Services Division, the division that handles parks as well. So what came to mind was there was a call years ago, I remember, at Peck Park, and the person didn't do a great job at all reporting what was going on. They reported something along the lines of a male Hispanic wandering around the park, hitting trees, hitting benches, hitting the Peck Park facility, the structure in the middle. It's a code 2 call. If the person, the stakeholder, the concerned person, when they call, if they painted that much better of a picture for the responding officers, myself and my partner, that would allow us to go code 3, lights and sirens, and get there faster to resolve the issue. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. Long story short, instead of a male Hispanic wandering around hitting stuff, what we saw was male Hispanic, I believe it was a red shirt, yellow shorts, easier to locate if you give those descriptions. So please, whoever is watching or listening, just again, be as detailed and descriptive as possible so the officers can kind of picture in their head what they're looking for and where they're looking for it at when they get there. The guy was intoxicated, possible mental illness. The person who called failed to mention that he had an edged weapon in his hand, and he was about 100 feet away from a group of children during a little summer camp thing. Now that's obviously different than somebody going around smacking trees. And again, nobody got hurt. We took the person into custody. He was arrested. But if something did happen by the person calling not exercising a better description of what was going on, the totality of the whole circumstances, that unfortunately prevented us from getting and responding in a more timely manner.
Let me add just a couple of things to that question. Part of that question also was what happens if LAPD doesn't respond until several hours later and the problem no longer presents itself. So a couple pieces. One, if as a community member, if you're making a radio call, please leave your contact number for us, because a lot of times our responding units will call that number and talk to that community member to see if the problem's ongoing and maybe help problem solve that. Secondly, if it's an incident that's already passed, maybe it's an ongoing problem, a quality of life issue, maybe you didn't get that initial response that day, it's imperative that you just follow up with us contact your senior lead officer, let them know exactly what's going on. If it's a problem that we can fix, maybe it's something that takes a little bit more time. It's not an urgent request. You don't have somebody's life in danger, but it's something that we can go back and investigate, problem solve, and try to get that fixed. So if you have a transit, maybe that's just camping in the park, has been there for a long time, that's something that we can come in our back end and fix that problem for you. So it resolves it.
And to add to what I was mentioning earlier, I know, for example, Peck Park's a very large park. The canyon, the edge off of Summerlin. When you do call, if you don't know exactly where you are, just look around at any park for that matter. Say I'm near the baseball field, near the swimming pool, east side or the west side, near the parking lot. Again, just so we can get officers over there in a timely manner to the correct part of the park. Now, a lot of people were wondering, why does it take so long for the police to respond? Sometimes they feel that the police don't show up. The police, we are required to show up at every call unless it's canceled by the PR, the person reporting. There's a couple different situations I can explain. I reached out to communications, and we're on the same page that if there's an occurrence, unusual occurrence, or a critical incident, a shooting, a hostage situation, someone a jumper near the bridge, overpass, something like that, that's going to tie up our resources, all police resources at that geographical location. So Harbor Division would just be pretty much prioritizing that one incident to resolve it. So to follow up with that would then cause the communications to dispatch officers from another area of the city. That could be 77th Division, that could be Southeast, Southwest, it could be coming from downtown, if all the other divisions are also tied up on things. So again, say for example, that was a code 2 call and officers are coming from South LA. If that person who called painted, again, a better description, then that would allow a better response time, and those officers could then respond code 3 down the freeway to Harbor Division. And again, I just emphasize to everybody watching and listening, you have the time. That's your only moment when you're calling, is to paint the best picture, write the best story, and provide that to the dispatch.
You want to do number 3?
Yeah. So Rexon Park, we've definitely been progressing and working on getting better relations with them. We've exchanged numbers, emails. I know Jessica and Mike Signorelli over at Peck Park have my number, have my email, and provide that information for me when even when I'm not working, I could actually forward that to the watch commander. For example, this last Saturday there was a hate crime at Peck Park, just a vandalism, but there was some hate tagging, some graffiti on the walls. And again, with our relationship that's been growing, he had my contact information, reached out to me, and I then relayed that information to the watch commander and had that prioritized for officers to go back out there and investigate. So again, I feel that over the past couple months that our relationships with Rec and Park has definitely grown a lot, and it will continue to grow.
And anytime we have any major gathering or group, and maybe they have a permit to have some type of activity at the park, we're always doing our due diligence to make sure that we have public safety in mind. So the way we do that is we meet with all the entities. We meet with CD15, Parks and Rec. It may be park rangers, and we meet with the organizer of the events, and we do a check down list and see exactly, how many people are going to show up, what's the activity there? Is there going to be alcohol involved? What kind of folks are going to be showing up? And that's going to allow us to determine what type of resources and what our response from LAPD is going to be to make sure that event goes in a peaceful manner. So these we are always doing these types of meetings with our partners here in the area. As long as we know that there's an actual event going, we're going to have these meetings just like we are today with this Zoom meeting. We get everybody involved and we start talking about the planning and getting prepared for it, so we have the appropriate resources to respond to anything that major that could potentially happen. So we're always doing that check down list and always doing that due diligence to keep that public safety in mind.
And what I took away from the follow-ups on the town hall meetings, brainstorming with CD15 and stakeholders, is pretty much we have a bunch of tools, and one of them is the decoy car. If there's a large event or if there's an event of concern and there isn't enough staffing for officers to be present through the entirety of that event, of that permitted event, we would then be looking forward to at least having a visibility of police presence there. I've worked with Mike Signorelli in regards to permits of large events. And just looking over the event and the title and what the event's about, all the details that go into it and the size of the group that's expected, I'll switch my schedule around, ask for other senior lead officers, reserve officers, and notify patrol to drive by every now and then just to check up on the event that's going on in the park.
The last question that we got here is, can you explain the training LAPD receives for instances of active shooters training circumstances like what happened at Peck Park? So for LAPD, we train all of our officers in active shooter training. It's immediate action, active training. So we are learning this in the academy, and then past the academy, we also have other trainings that we do to address this. So basically the whole point here for immediate action, if we have an active shooter anywhere, whether it's a park or a large group, when we respond to that, we're going to take immediate action. We're going to make notifications to communications that we need resources, but we're not going to stand around and wait for those resources to get there. We're going to form up contact teams, and we're going to go in and we're going to try to neutralize that threat to save as many lives as possible. And that's what we're trained to do. We also do other outside trainings. We have another one called MACTAC that we do, where we work with other entities such as the fire department or paramedics. So if we have an active shooter going, we train with our for other first responders so they can come with us to respond and provide aid if we have a bunch of victims down. So we do a lot of other trainings to prepare us for a situation like this. As far as so basically, we really emphasize that we take immediate action. We're not going to wait for the resources. So just for an example, we had an incident about 3 or 4 years ago at Kaiser at Kaiser Hospital, where we had a radio call of an active shooter inside the hospital. And we were getting radio calls that somebody saw an individual walk into the hospital with a shotgun. And then we were getting other additional radio calls that there were shots fired inside the hospital. So during that incident, we had everybody in LAPD is responding to this event. So citywide, we have resources citywide responding to the event. And the first officers that arrived, they start to put together contact teams, and they started to actively search the hospital for this potential shooter. During this incident, we had as many as 6 contact teams that were walking through the hospital trying to identify where this active shooter was. We had a bunch of other resources responding that we set up outside for containment purposes. Fortunately, there was no active shooter. What had happened was there was an individual that walked into the hospital with an umbrella that was mistaken for a shotgun. And they started making announcements inside the hospital that there was an armed person inside the hospital. People started to react. They started slamming doors to barricade themselves inside rooms. And when they were slamming the doors, it sounded like gunfire. So that's why we were getting those additional radio calls. Long story short, though, this was a great training for us. I'm glad there was nobody hurt. There was no active shooter, but it was a great training. Kind of demonstrates on how we would react if there was an active shooter. And what our goals are is to immediately stop that threat and to try to save as many lives as possible. So that was the last of the questions. If anybody wants to open up for additional follow-up questions.
Okay, so I'm going to circle back to the panel. So the question,
Hello, can anybody hear me?
yes, Joe, you guys will come up next. I can hear
Okay,
you.
I'm sorry, I've been having troubles logging on. Okay, I'm glad you can hear me.
Okay, thank you. So the panel, I'm going to circle back to our panel, and they're going to have some follow-up questions for you, and then we'll open it up to the public. So Chris?
Thanks, and thank you, officers. One thing that occurred to me is thinking about this particular incident and then just San Pedro and the harbor area as a whole, we have a sort of a patchwork of jurisdictions where we have Long Beach, we have Rancho Palos Verdes, and that sort of thing. Do you, in the Harbor Division, do anything differently, or have you developed any sort of relationships with the Sheriff's Department or other, I'm not sure if we have, like, let's say Carson or Gardena or whatever. So when you have these sort of areas like, let's say, Harbor Gateway or whatever, where you have Carson and Torrance on either side, do you develop different relationships with those other agencies to provide coverage, when, for instance, a situation might involve a wider area?
Answer this one. Sure. Okay, so that's a great question. So for the scenario that I ran by you about the Kaiser Hospital, we had outside agencies respond to that event. So we had a possible active shooter, and we had other agencies that came to our aid. They were notified via our communication. So yes, we had sheriffs, we had Port PD respond. I believe we had somebody from Long Beach PD, other agencies that responded to that incident to support our efforts. So we do have relationships with other agencies in the area that would help us out.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
See John's hand up.
Hello, Paul. Sergeant Manlove. How you guys doing?
Good, John. How you
Good,
doing?
Not bad. Listen, I just kind of a quick question. Number one is kind of like, how are you guys working with the park rangers? Because I know park rangers have a limited amount of rangers, okay? And we have what, 300-400 parks. How effective and how are you working with the park rangers in a situation where, like what happened at Peck Park and everything?
So when a radio call is created, say for example at a park, again it's both simulcasted on Security Services Division and Harbor Division. The park rangers, they have a different system. However, they do scan our frequency. So every park ranger in that geographical region does scan LAPD's broadcasting. They'll be our backup. They're definitely a supplement to us responding.
And John, yeah, if I can add to that, the park rangers are in the same position that we are here at LAPD. They're definitely understaffed. I mean, we have way more parks here in the city of Los Angeles than we have park rangers to be able to manage those parks. We definitely could use some more. But as far as if we're having like a very active immediate threats, we're going to be the ones that are going to respond to that park events. It's going to be LAPD. Now, if it's going to be something more of a quality of life issue or we're having an ongoing problem, then we're going to reach out to those park rangers or our contacts at park rangers. We have a senior lead officer that's a park ranger that we reach out to, and we give them specifics. Hey, we're having an issue at this park. Can you look into it? And they're going to do some follow up. They're going to try to problem solve that issue with us. So as far as like if it's something immediate, like what happened at Peck Park, we're not going to be, really depending on the park rangers to respond to something like that. That's going to be us. We're going to be up on the front lines.
Thank you, guys.
Sure.
Thanks, you guys. Now we're going to open it up to the public. So timekeeper, Lori Jacobs.
Hi, Lori Jacobs, Northwest San Pedro stakeholder. Thank you, officers. Appreciate this. Maybe you already covered this, or Park Rec and Parks is going to cover it. But when you're looking at the permits that have been issued, is there a certain threshold or a number of people that you look at or projected that are going to be at an event that is sort of an alert to you that maybe you need to cruise by there a little more often than the average time? And does the type of event possibly trigger more concerns for you to cover the park and be more readily available?
No, good question, Lori. Thank you for that question. No, absolutely. So we do like a check down list. Yeah, the number of people at an event is really gonna tell us a lot, right? If we have, we have 50 people show up, it's not that big of a deal. But if you have, we're expecting 2,000 or 3,000 people, obviously that's going to be a big issue. So yeah, that is definitely taken into consideration. We want to know, exactly what type of activities are going to be going on. Are they going to be asking to drink at the park? Some of these events, they ask to have alcohol on site, and that's a big concern for us, because when you have 2,000 people hanging out drinking alcohol, you're going to have some problems. So we take all that stuff into consideration. And, a lot of times we fight back. We say, 2,000 people is not acceptable. That's too many people. We do not approve of that, or we do not approve of allowing these folks to consume alcohol. If they're going to have this event, LAPD's recommendation is no alcohol at the event. So we do our due diligence. We, through our experience and having to manage these events and have an idea of which way they're going to go, we take all that into consideration. We push back a lot on what we do and don't allow. So hopefully that answers your question.
So do you have a say in the issuance of the permit?
Well, we don't. The Parks and Rec are going to issue that permit, right? But, there's also other things that we can put in place that would make that event safer. Okay, so they might be able to do the permit, but the Parks and Rec might say, you know what, you want 2,000 people, we're going to cap it off at 1,000. Or yes, you can have your event, but we're not going to allow alcohol. We're not going to allow tents. They're going to put in restrictions there to make that event safer. Security. So they're more likely than not going to approve it. They're going to approve these events, but it's a matter of how do we make it safer? And that's the discussions that we have when we all get together and meet.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Any other public comment? Okay, then we'll move on in the agenda. Next up is Rec and Park. Dan Dedman from Rec and Park.
Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Deanne. I am the Region Superintendent for the Pacific Region for the Department of Recreation and Parks. I just wanted to start by giving an overview of our department as a whole. We steward over 16,000 acres of parkland. We have over 559 parks, 411 playgrounds, 318 tennis courts, 123 recreation centers. We have over 130 outdoor fitness zones, 59 swimming pools, 29 senior centers, 27 skate parks, 13 golf courses, 12 museums, 13 dog parks, 13 lakes, 92 miles of hiking trails. We are home to a number of historic venues and landmarks as well, such as the Griffith Park Observatory, the iconic Greek Theater, the famous Hollywood sign, and Muscle Beach at Venice. And quickly, I wanted to give you the scope of just what my region looks like, or my area of oversight actually looks like, which we call the Pacific region. The region that I oversee includes San Pedro, Wilmington, Harbor City, Harbor Gateway, up through the 110 freeway, east and west, easterly borders through South LA is whatever easterly border of the city of Los Angeles is. And to the west is La Cienega Boulevard. I have 43 recreation centers, just like Peck Park, 5 museums, another 65 parks, or what we call unstaffed parks. And that is just the Pacific region. But tonight I was actually asked to speak on park security, enforcement, and permitting. And I have, like LAPD, have questions as well. I kind of did mine more of a narrative, but park security enforcement is done by LAPD with assistance of our park rangers. Each park does not have dedicated park security monitors or law enforcement at them. We have to call and ask for enforcement, just like the general public. When incidents happen, we need enforcement. When we have larger events that require security, we utilize, our LAPD senior lead officers, our security services officers, and our department rangers to assist. Many of you see our department rangers at Harbor Regional Park and believe that they're only there, but they're not. That is actually their small ranger station. Much like in Griffith Park, we have a ranger station. Much like Harbor Division has a LAPD station. That is just the location that my rangers here in the Pacific region check in and out every day. We were actually able to create that small station, which is really great because they used to report to Griffith Park, meaning their 10-hour day started at Griffith Park, then they had to drive the hour and a half or 2 hours to get here, right, to be in the Pacific region, and then drive back to Griffith Park. So they no longer actually have to do that. They actually do report right here out of Kenmoloy Harbor Regional Park, which gives us more time to have our rangers in our area. In regards to permitting, the department permits picnic spaces, weddings, special events, sporting events, filmings, and just much, much more. Each facility that has a full-time person, such as Peck Park, is responsible to calendar and provide permits for their specific facility. Picnic permits, small permits, we ask at least a 2-week advance notice so that they can do their due diligence, do paperwork that's involved. For more involved events, larger events, we ask for 3 to 6 months so that we can have those internal and external conversations with the parties that want to come and utilize our facilities. But every patron is required to fill out our application for use of facility on a current COVID-19 information sheet. If it's a youth sports activity, they also have some information sheet as well that they fill out. For a simple request of a normal activity, calendars are checked, dates are reserved, fees are estimated, and applications are routed to our region office for the director's district supervisor to review and then process a final permit. For more complicated, larger events, anything more than just a field permit or a picnic, we do internal meetings as well and meetings with the permittee, including our department maintenance and our construction staff, with LAPD, with our park rangers, with the fire department, with Bureau of Street Services, with DOT. All of these other departments have to be notified and are part of helping us make decisions on what we permit and how we permit a special event. And that's why we do ask for at least 3 to 6 months in advance for any kind of larger event. The events that happened at Peck Park on Sunday, July 24th are very unfortunate. And we never want to see these types of things happen and take place in any of our parks. We're definitely thankful to LAPD and LAFD and all of the other resources from all the other local neighboring cities that came to assist that day. And for the many days after that they were at the parks completing their investigations and continue to do so. Our RAP employees were right there as well assisting. We had staff on duty that day and they assisted in sheltering in place. Our park ranger was on duty and on site that day. And we had staff that reported to the site as well to open the facilities for LAPD and the SWAT teams to go through them as well. And to keep lights on and to turn water off. We actually had many staff that had to report back to work that evening as well. We never want to think that we have to put our training into practice, but we are reminded quite often that we do. But our staff do actually go through training. We have annual emergency preparedness trainings. We do active shooter trainings. Our staff go through run, hide, and fight trainings as well. We have lockdown procedures that we go through with all of our full-time staff. We do simple earthquake drills as well. Out in the harbor, we also have tsunami earth drills as well, which is kind of interesting but fun. But staff also have monthly safety trainings that include workplace violence and workplace safety that they go through as well. Let me just look at the questions that were provided to me. I talked about security. One of the specific questions was, how does the permit process vary from park to park? And it does not. We have the same policies for every one of our parks. There was a question about if we limit our capacity of a party at a park, and it's really dependent on the size of the park and the amenities that the park has. But we do have size enforcements, right? And that's where LAFD actually comes into effect as well, giving us what our maximum capacities are at our parks to be safe. One of the questions was, what ideas do you have to improve the permitting and enforcement? I'm really not sure that we need to improve our permitting, other than people need to understand that they need to have a permit. People need to understand they need to come to us and actually let us know what they want to do in our park systems. And again, enforcement is done by LAPD and our park rangers. And we, just like you, call, and we, just like LAPD, are very limited in the resources and the staffing that we have. What should a community member do if they observe a rule or other non-criminal violations in the park? And again, LAPD and our park rangers do all of our enforcement. I did talk about the training that our staff do. One of the questions was, what type of drill training do recreation and park staff receive? And we do active shooter training. Again, we have emergency preparedness training. We do run, hide, and fight training and lockdown procedures as well. And we do them annually, just so you're very aware. We actually do all of those annually. Sometimes we think it's old, but we put it into practice much more than we ever want to. Another question was, outside of the incident on July 24th, were there general concerns about enforcement of permits or lack of security or overall issues? Enforcement has always been an issue for us because of the lack of officers that we have in the harbor area. LAPD is under-resourced, our park rangers as well. And so the more we can do to get more officers down in this area, I think the better we will be. It says, explain the procedures for how resources are allocated regarding security officers, enforcement of permits, and park rules and park staffing. Again, RAP is we're not funded to have security officers at each location to enforce permits or park rules. We, again, have to call for enforcement of things that are going wrong at our facilities. But if there is a larger event, we actually do have the permittee actually have to pay for extra resources for law enforcement or security officers to be in at those types of events. There were some questions for our general manager. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to be here today. He got called away to another meeting, and so he was He was definitely wanting to be here today, but unfortunately was not able to just at the last minute. So his questions were, what is the process to change policy or permitting processes within the department? Describe in detail each chain of division it would have to go through for a permitting process, enforcement, and budget issues to be able to change. So any kind of policy that we want to change within our department normally starts, with the need for that policy to be changed, right? It can come from the field staff, it can come from our supervisors, it can come from community. But it goes through that same kind of chain, right? It goes through our recreation supervisors to our principal recreation supervisors. Then at my level, the superintendents, there are 4 of us. We would meet with a cross section of our maintenance and construction, our planning division, our partnerships division, our park services division, and our special operations branch to make sure that that policy and procedure that we have to instill citywide actually meets and works for everyone citywide. We then have assistant general managers, our chief financial officer and executive officer actually look at what is proposed and what we would like to see if there's any kind of budget that needs to be added, or salaries or personnel or special enforcement that needs to go along with that policy change. And if there is, then there has to go through our budget process. From that, we also have our Recreation and Parks Board of Commissioners. They have a task force that would look at the new policy, and then it would go through their full board for approvals. We then turn around and go backwards again and train all of our staff and then be able to do implementation. So hopefully that answers that question about how we actually change policy within our department. The last question for Jimmy was, how do we get in touch with the commissioners that make those decisions? So our Recreation and Parks Board of Commissioners meet every first and third Thursday. They are still meeting via Zoom, so you can always go on to our department's website, laparks.org, look under commissioners, and it will show when their meetings are. They post their agendas and their Zoom links. Or you can also look at the LA City website under boards and commissioners and commissions, sorry. And all of their agendas are posted there as well with Zoom links as well. They can also be emailed directly at rap.commissioners with an S at lacity.org. So I hope that's helpful. And those were the questions that were posed to me.
Mute myself. There we go. So thank you, Deanne. So I'm going to open it up to our panel for some follow-up questions. Angela.
Thank you, Deanne. That was really helpful information. I'm very appreciative. I do have one question, as we talked about in our preparation meeting. So the larger events are required to have security factored into their event and the costs associated with the event. What happens when you're at the park, there's a giant event with hundreds of people and there's not a permit? What does the park staff do in that situation?
As long as we're on duty, because we are closed on Sundays, right? So, but as long as we're on duty, staff they have to call law enforcement. So their phone calls are to LAPD and to our park rangers.
Okay, so then if it's a park with no staff or a day that there's no staff, it's just kind of what happens.
We hope that the community will actually make those same phone calls for us.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, Deanne. How are you?
Good, thanks.
I got a question for you, and it's one of the things that why we brought this town hall meeting together is I know you guys are understaffed, and I know you guys have a budget that you work on and everything. So how can the Northwest San Pedro Neighborhood Council, how can we help? How can we get together? What can we do to help speed things along and get maybe more people for you, better, checking on our parks, for whether it's a restroom door or, damaged sprinklers or trees ready to fall on somebody's car. what can we do? Because that's what we're here for. We're here to, see if we can help you and see what we can do to join forces and, let's improve, what we have as of right now.
Great, thanks, John, for asking. Really, so again, all departments go through a budget process, and we are in the in budget season right now. We're at the start of budget season, which we call budget season, right, for the city for next fiscal year. So for July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2024, we are in budget season now. We are requesting, every department actually is putting together their budget ask, right, to city council and to the mayor's office. And then we go through budget hearings. During the budget hearing season, which is February, I believe, March, where I believe neighborhood councils also have a seat at those budget hearings, and where we need advocates, both recreation parks and LAPD, right? Because if we want more enforcement, we need to make sure we have more police officers that are able to do that enforcement. If we want more things at our parks, if we want, better security cameras, those types of things, both of our departments need public and neighborhood council assistance in advocating for us to say that we are the most important, because there is only a lump sum of money that the city has every year, and every department is fighting for that same lump sum of money. So if we are not the most important department to you as a community and as a neighborhood council, then we're going to get what we get every year. We're not going to get the extra. Right. So if there are things that you want to see as a community or want to see as a neighborhood council be funded through the city budget, we need you to advocate for us and for that.
Okay, sounds good. Keep us posted on that when this stuff comes up. You could email myself, Melanie, Dan, and we'll see what we can do. We can get together as a group.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I had just a couple of short questions. They're really more kind of procedural, just to clarify. So your the Recreation and Parks Board of Commissioners is really ultimately the decision-making body, like whatever it is that you've generated internally or externally, in this case maybe, but whether it's something that the department perceives as a need or whatever, ultimately those things get approved or not at the commission, the board commission.
Yes, for any policies that we're trying to change, yes, our commissioners actually do that.
Okay, and are they appointed by the mayor, or how do they come to be on?
Yes, they're appointed. Our commissioners are appointed by the mayor. Yes, and they have term limits.
Okay, and are those board meetings, those done in public? Are those, the type of things that the public could attend?
Yes, of course. They're public commission meetings, just like any other city commission. The public is more than welcome to attend. And again, they're still meeting on Zoom. So they are just, they're, okay. Yeah.
Thanks. And then, so the other one was, it ties into the other questions about reporting and what to do, if an event or attendance is kind of past a certain threshold. Are there specific ordinances, that is, if an organization, a group of people, whomever, have either failed to secure a permit or gotten a permit and then not held to the stipulations thereof? So essentially, if they're, and I know that the permitting isn't entirely strict, but in terms of the tipping point at which it becomes a law enforcement issue, what specific ordinances would they be in violation of if, for instance, they tried to permit 100 people and brought 1,000, or if they, if they basically go outside the limits that they agreed to, or simply not gotten the permit at all, what would be the legal basis of the police response to that? Like, is it trespassing or that sort of thing, or there's something specific to the park that would be in violation of?
Chief, are you there? Can you help me with that answer to that question? Or either Sergeant or Slow.
I only caught part of that question. Can you repeat that real quick?
Sure. Just when, if and when a group or a party essentially either fails to secure a permit or exceeds the limits of the permit, and it maybe possibly becomes an issue for law enforcement, are there specific statutes that are specific to the use of the park, or is it just simply like a trespassing thing? Or, how, what would be the basis upon which the law enforcement would, break up, or I don't know if they can eject people from the park, or like what's the legal basis of the action that they would take if, for instance, you found there was an event that didn't satisfy your permitting requirements?
Well, when they issue a permit, there's certain guidelines that they have to follow. And if they do not, if the attendees do not follow the conditions of the permit, then we will close it down. If they're operating without a permit, we will shut it down. And so, like, take for instance, somebody applies for a permit and we get to the location, there's drinking going on. Well, part of that permit doesn't allow the drinking. So if that's happening, we have the ability to shut it down and ask people to leave the park for violation of that permit and violation of other park rules. So you can't drink anywhere in the city of Los Angeles in a city park unless you have a permit. So that's twofold there. We can shut it down for violation of the permit for not allowing drinking, and then we can cite for actually drinking in the park.
Okay, so you basically have the legal status of for instance, in this case, you're not allowed to drink, and then your permit is essentially an exception to that you have to satisfy if it's granted.
Right. Yeah. There's certain rules that anybody who applies for a permit, there's certain guidelines. First of all, they apply for it. They tell us what the activity is going to be. If we don't approve it, then we don't issue a permit. If we do approve it, they have to follow the guidelines of the permit that they applied for.
Understood. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This is Lydia. I have a question. I'd like to know the name of the person speaking under Park Rangers for the minutes.
My name is Joe Liscarelli, and I am the chief of the Park Rangers.
And how do you spell the last name?
First name is Joe, last name is Losorelli.
Thank you so much.
Mel, you're still muted.
We're going to move over to attendees for questions. So Desi, you have your hand up?
Hi, yeah. I have two questions for Deanne. Actually, I just want to know if she has an update on, apparently there's been mutilation of animals at Ken Malloy and also the fires. That's it.
Deanne?
I do not have an update on mutilation of animals at Harbor Regional. Maybe Chief may know something more. And then I did not get an actual why or how the fire at Harbor Regional started. I never actually got that from the fire department.
That fire was started by a homeless individual.
There you go. Thanks, Chief.
Okay, Lori Jacobs.
Hi, thank you very much, Deanne. Appreciate all the information, and the permits are as good as the enforcement. I understand that there's a lack of resources, but the inconsistency in enforcement's what disturbs me. I've heard so many stories about people being kicked out of Averill Park because it's so beautiful and they've got 10 Girl Scouts on a bridge taking picture or prom pictures. That's no big deal, but they'll make them leave. Consistently, there's violations. People drive on the grass when they're not supposed to. They bypass the bollards. And I've also heard situations where they didn't have a permit, and so somebody showed up and then wrote them a permit on the premises. That should not be allowed. So what can we do about the inconsistencies? And let's enforce it where it makes sense. You got 10 Girl Scouts standing on a bridge taking a picture. That's not a big deal. You've got a giant party and they're driving on the grass and ruining it. That is a big deal. So how can we try and realign our resources to be more consistent?
Deanne?
Sure. So we've discussed that in the past, and years ago we did have a park monitor that actually went from park to park to try to educate people for the need to have a permit for multiple different reasons, that you don't want to have 2 or 5 different events happening at the same time, or if there's an actual wedding going on, you don't want to have, another 100 people at the park doing, having picnics or having a Girl Scout anything or whatever, right? Because if they permitted to have pictures on the bridge and then you had 10 or 15 people actually walking by, that also wanted to be there, we would never permit those 2 different separate things. So we used to have an actual park monitor that went around and checked on the parks and checked that people actually had permits, or educated them that the fact that they actually needed to have a permit to actually be there. When he came upon things, like you mentioned at Harbor Highlands Park, he would have to call law enforcement and ask for them to come and either shut them down or ask them to leave or to not be as loud, or just, for enforcement that way. He wasn't the person that was going to be able to enforce or get anybody to leave that didn't want to, right? Or that wasn't going to be law abiding and understand the reasons why they needed to have a permit or why they shouldn't actually be there. So we did have that because he was threatened quite often. We actually weren't able to sustain him, to keep him on duty to be able to do that. And that's why we don't have that person anymore. We also actually don't have the funding to do that anymore either. So, but unfortunately those are the issues that have happened in the past.
Dan Nave?
Thank you. I have a couple of questions, and partly they're comments and partly questions. The first one is kind of a follow-up to what Lori was just talking about. It would seem to me that there's if a family goes to the park and has a picnic, I would assume, maybe right, maybe wrong, that they don't need a permit, but there's certain size or conditions under which you do need a permit. Where's the line there between my taking my kids to the park to play and having to have a permit? That's one. And the second one is, it really, I'm a little bit befuddled actually on the fact that there are no staff on duty in the larger parks on Sunday. And I understand it's partly a staffing issue. I don't know to what extent additional staff would help, and to what extent you've really looked at how could staff time be reallocated so that there is coverage in the larger parks on Sunday. So those are my 2 questions.
Sure, thanks, Diana. So basically picnic permits in a picnic area, if you have 10 or more people, we normally look at that as probably wanting to have a permit for a couple different reasons. So that your area is reserved for you and that you'll have a space, and that once we have 10 people, 10 people, 10 people, 10 people, 10 people, we don't have, the 100 of people kind of at our parks all at the same time. And then for Sundays, the department was actually open 7 days a week many moons ago, but we had budget cuts, and that was one of the things that actually happened to our department for recreation, is that we actually are closed on Sundays because of budget cuts. We never received those back. And so basically it's a funding issue to actually be able to have enough full-time or part-time staff to actually be open on Sundays.
Already, any more public comment? I'm going to circle back, and I have one question for you, Deanne. Is there any plans at this time to hire somebody that's has more teeth, more an official position, rather than the guy that was doing the permit checks before, to get someone that's going to go around and have a little bit more teeth and be able to enforce a little bit heavier on the permits in the parks?
I don't have the budget to actually do that, or the personnel. Maybe Chief could answer that question if we are able to, and I don't think they are either budget-wise, but for a park safety officer or another park ranger, I know we're very limited in what we have. That's the only other kind of more security type personnel that we have in our department.
Right.
But again, it would be budget issues that we would have.
Whoops. Let's see. Jason?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. So I have a question. So I live on the park. My backyard is on the park, and I have a frequent problem with people on motorbikes, dirt bikes flying through the park. This is somewhat of a borderline issue between just vandalism as they damage the park with this, but they're also dangerous because I go on the trails regularly, sometimes at dusk, and I've nearly been hit by these bikes on multiple times. I've called the park rangers, they transfer me to LAPD. LAPD says you need to call the park rangers, and no one ever shows up. I've probably called 50 times in the last several years. What can we do to better coordinate the two different staffs so someone can show up and enforce the posted rules, no motor driven vehicles on the trails? Thank you.
Melanie, that might be a question for the Rangers or LA.
Okay.
Yeah, I can answer that. First of all, we do have rangers assigned down to Pacific Region that work out of Kemaloy Park, but they handle all the parks in the Pacific Region. So when we get calls like that, we don't transfer those calls at all to LAPD. Our rangers will go out there and handle that. If there's vandalism that occurred on our property, they'll address it accordingly. If there's citations that need to be issued, they will do that. The only time we will transfer a call like that to LAPD is if we just don't have the staffing to send right away to address that. But our rangers are deployed down there. We do cite for that. We've cited before in the past. We've impounded vehicles, from young kids or adults that were, tearing up the property or riding their bikes where they're not supposed to be. So we do handle that. Very rarely do we ask to have LAPD, answer a call like that if we're available to do it.
I think it's usually been the case that you just didn't have rangers available, but many times that's been the case.
Okay. Well, if this is an ongoing problem where it's occurring, daily or weekly, I mean, I can put in a special request for the rangers to go out there and just focus on that for, a period of time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Gwen?
Hi, this is actually a question for Deanne. Last we spoke, or there was a discussion, the vegetation clearances for fire prevention, especially along the borders where houses are and the trails. You mentioned that there was a schedule of around July, but of course, well, with hotter springs and drier springs, perhaps that schedule needs to be advanced to earlier in the spring. I was wondering if there had been an assessment with that, and if Rec and Park has been able to create another schedule other than the July clearances.
Yeah, so I did talk to our planning division and our maintenance division about that. It is a funding issue because if we do brush clearance too early in the spring, then we'll get more growth and then not have funding to do brush clearance right before fire season. So, but we are looking actually, instead of waiting until, the latter part of June or right before the 4th of July, we are actually looking at least a May brush clearance package so that brush clearance can actually happen kind of early summer or late spring kind of thing. So in May, early June, kind of doing a brush clearance then, because we do only have funding to do it once a year. What's really nice though is I know many of you on this call that I've seen so far are part of our Friends of the Pet Park Canyon group that we are just starting and putting together so that we can do put together some cleanups of some of the invasive plants we have, or just of the tumbleweeds. And then starting with small areas. It's going to take some time, but if we don't start, it'll never get done. So, and then starting to plant some native succulents that would then get rid of some of the brush that we have to clear every year, right? So hopefully that'll help. Again, will be a long process, but I'm very happy that we have quite a few of that are super involved and and highly knowledgeable to actually make all of this happen. So definitely we are looking into it, and thank all of you for being a part of that.
Thank you, Diane.
Doug Epperhart.
Yeah, hi, everybody. I guess I have a question as I hear about calls for park rangers and police and whatnot. You know, everything is statistics driven, and whenever we see our senior lead officers report police, we get crime stats. I'm curious, does somebody keep those sorts of statistics for city parks specifically? And do they make those available? Because, you know, in the 30 years I've been doing this down here, we hear about incidents, but I don't know how many of them ever really rise to the level of a crime per se. But who keeps those stats? Where do we get them?
Okay, so this is Chief Losrell again. So yes, we do keep crime statistics that we get from our crime analysis detail. So I can tell you that last year in 2001, we had 2,500 crimes in the park. In the park systems, not anywhere outside of it. This is just in the parks. We had almost 2,600 crimes in the parks, 12 murders in the parks, 188 robberies, 245 assaults, 25 rapes, 35 rape twos where somebody was penetrated by a foreign object. We had about 3,000 vehicles broken into, and about 1,400 cars stolen out of the parks. Those are Part 1 crimes that are kept that we get from FBI that are considered FBI statistics in regards to the type of crime that comes out. That does not include property crimes like vandalism and stuff like that. But yes, we do keep track of our crimes in the parks, and we do it on a quarterly and we track those by quarterly through the year, and then at the end of the year we put those statistics together. So I'm capable of getting those crime stats anytime anybody wants to hear about them.
Okay, one quick follow-up. Are those broken down geographically by park or area?
Yeah, we can break them down by parks. We can break them down by regions. We can break them down by all parks, and we can also break down the type of crime. So in other words, if somebody wants to know how many murders we had in a park, in one park, you know, last year, we can break it down to that.
Okay, thank you.
Aggravated assaults.
Okay, any other public comment before we circle back? Or is it online commenters? Anybody else that hasn't commented yet? Okay, Gwen. Oh, Cecilia. Go ahead, Cecilia. Cecilia, go ahead and talk.
Okay, there we go. Thank you. Yeah, for the two decades that I can recall, between the 60s and the 80s, this is about the park permits. We used to have big parties at Peck Park. And as you look at the park from Western Avenue, you look to the right where all those picnic area was. And this is long before there was any of the play area and anything like that by the parking lot. And my aunts, my uncles, my folks, they all threw in, they get a park permit. We always had a big group, but whether it was really big or not that big, we always had a park permit. And over the years, as we got older and got from being kids to helping, we would go find our area. They would always pull the permit. We go to our area, and sometimes there would be people who take it over. And sometimes they would leave, and sometimes they would refuse because, as far as they were concerned, it was finders keepers. So it was very interesting to have to somebody went to go find a a payphone to call about having somebody come out to enforce our permit, because they'd have a copy of the permit. And then sometimes there would be a permit on one of the picnic tables for the area, and sometimes it might have flown off, who's to say? But they always had their copy of the permit, and so we always were justified in the place, the area that we had leased for the day. And so it was very interesting, because sometimes it was fine, you come in, and then the park ranger would come by, whoever it was at the time, and they would make sure we were the right people. Somebody would always show them our receipt, and it was all good to go. So whether we had to impose having them come and having people forcibly removed, or we were able to just walk in and just show the receipt when they came by, it was always very well done, and we were very grateful. So I understand all the budgeting and the concerns that have happened since then. But at one time it was a very smooth operation, and it was always worth it to reserve the amount of space you needed, because we always had plenty of space. And interesting to have people who tried to move in on your space too, because maybe they would show up in the next area and they want to take over your tables, and it was your table. So there's that. But
Your
thank you for
time's
letting
up,
me
so
speak.
can you finish it up?
Yes, thank you for letting me speak. But I mean, that's something that worked very well, and I hope it's implemented with more personnel in the future, in the not too distant future. Thank you for letting me speak.
Alrighty, thank you. Gwen?
Hi, this is actually a follow-up to Doug Eberhardt's question about the data and statistics. Is it further segmented down to how many of the crimes are perpetrated and on the unhoused, where the unhoused are the victims? That would be, I believe that would be a very good data point, and hopefully that is also included in the data. Thank you.
Well, I can tell you that, yes, we're able to determine the perpetrators of the crime by breaking them up by male, female, by race, by, unhoused. But I will tell you this, that most of the crimes that are being occurred are in the city, but most of the crimes are unfortunately caused by the homeless on innocent people. Not always, but most of the crimes are.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to the next agenda item, which is LA Fire Department. Is there anyone in the attendee side that is from LA Fire Department? Raise your hand if you are. Okay, I see nobody from South Bureau of LA Fire Department. So we'll be moving on. Ryan, I noticed that you're there. I had moved you over. We're gonna do park rangers first, and then I'll allow you to speak before general public comment. Okay? So, Joe, you're up.
All right, so like Deanne mentioned earlier, we have 559 parks throughout the city. We patrol from the San Pedro area all the way to the foothills of the valley, from East Los Angeles all the way over to the coast of Venice Beach. I have 31 rangers for 559 parks. Our rangers are sworn law enforcement officers, and they also have dual status. They're firefighters. So in addition to enforcing penal code and vehicle code violations within the park, our rangers also fight fires. We have 2 fire engines, Class C fire engines that we use throughout the city. We have 2 water tender vehicles, and 15 of our trucks are brush patrol vehicles that are capable, that carry 100 gallons of water, to put out small brush fires. Last year, we responded to 550 fires in the park systems. Our rangers were usually first on scene because we deploy, in the
Joe, you're muted. Somehow you muted.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Okay, so we have, our rangers only deploy, meaning that we only service parks that are regional, which include Griffith Park, Lake Balboa, Hanson Dam area, Elysian Park, and Debs Park. And so that's where we have rangers that are deployed on a regular basis. Also, I'm sorry, Harbor Regional is included in that too. However, if we get complaints in the pocket parks or the smaller parks, our rangers do calls for service in all our parks, but we don't deploy. And obviously, I don't have the resources to deploy in the 550 parks that we police throughout the city. Our rangers go through the LAPD Academy, just like LAPD officers do. They stand side by side through the entire 6 months of training. And then once they're out, they're on a 12-month probationary period. That's mandated by the state. Once they finish their 12-month probationary period, then they're certified and post-certified by the state of California. Our park rangers work very, very closely with the Los Angeles Police Department in all the regions. We also work very, very closely with the LA City Fire Department. Throughout the city, we work very closely with the California Highway Patrol and other surrounding agencies that butt up to the city, like Glendale, Burbank, El Segundo, Torrance PD. We work closely with these other agencies as well. The next question that folks were asking is, what do we do to get more park rangers? I'm in the process now of hiring an additional 20 rangers. But it takes a period of time to hire the rangers because of the fact that we have to follow state mandated laws. There's certain protocols that we have to follow. So a background on a ranger can. I just lost it.
You're back.
Okay, can you hear me? I'm sorry, I'm having problems with that. So our park rangers, it takes about anywhere from 2 months to 6 months to get them just in the academy, and then after that, they do the 6 months in the academy when we finally get them for field duties. And I will open it up to any questions. Anybody?
Okay, so panel, do you have any follow-up questions? John?
Thank you, Chief. I just have one question. They go through the same exact schooling that the police officers at the academy go through and everything. On your rangers, what is the percentage that you lose rangers and go to the police force?
Well, there's a couple of, that's a good question. There's a couple of things that happen. We spend, and this is also true with LAPD or LAX police and Port Police, we spend somewhere around $150,000 from start to finish on getting them trained. So because our park rangers are not armed, although they are required to do the same duties in the parks as any other law enforcement agency, we lose rangers to other agencies simply because they're asked to do police work without a weapon, and they feel very unsafe. So we just this month I lost one ranger to the Los Angeles Police Department. 2 months ago I lost another 2 to Burbank Police Department, and through the years we lose them to mainly to LAPD, simply because when you're doing law enforcement work and you're asked to do certain things, it creates a huge officer safety issue for the ranger. And other departments pay a little bit better than the park ranger division, so they're getting better pay. They're getting they want to be law enforcement officers. They want that weapon to feel safe, and so we lose a lot of them to other agencies. And I'm having a hard time. I'll hire 5 rangers. I'll lose 3 of those rangers within the first 2 years, and we have to. This is something that we've been dealing with for a period of time, and so I've been asking the city council and the mayor's office to arm our rangers, because they are certified by the state and recognized by the state as law enforcement officers, and legally they can carry a weapon. But the city council just will not budge on it because of the optics, I guess. That how does it look to arm more police officers in the city when a lot of them are trying to disarm or defund police departments? That's the issues that we're dealing with right now. And in the meantime, it's costing us, trying to keep, the Rangers, our Ranger division employed to a certain level. A lot of people don't know is that our Rangers are required. We're the only agency other than the federal park agency that requires our Rangers to have a 4-year degree to come on to the park ranger division. And so when we get these park rangers, we get them a little bit older than the standard, police department. The police departments across the state required to be 20 and a half in the police academy. Well, our rangers have to have either 4 years of law enforcement experience to come on the division, or they have to have a 4-year degree, which usually means we get them a little bit older, a little bit more mature when they come on. So that's the issues that we're having with as far as losing them to LAPD and other law enforcement agencies.
Thank you.
To backstop on that, Joe, also, whatever happened to the council file that was in by Joe Bosciano that he had to arm park rangers? Did that fall off, or?
Melanie, I can touch on this if you want me to. It's Ryan.
Ryan, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I can speak to that. I actually have it pulled up right now. I mean, the council file is still active. The issue we're having with this is that once the motion was submitted on February 11th of 2020, it was referred to 2 committees, one of which was the Arts, Parks, Health, Education, and Neighborhoods Committee, and also the Public Safety Committee. The Arts Committee, or the Parks Committee, did approve the councilman's motion. However, of the 2 committees, Public Safety Committee has yet to schedule the motion for consideration. Our office has tried to work with the chair of the Public Safety Committee's office, which is Monica Rodriguez of the Valley, to get it at least scheduled, if not scheduled, waived to full council consideration, and they have declined to do so. I believe that part of it is, as Chief Losarelli mentioned, the optics and the climate, especially back in 2020, in the anti-law enforcement sentiment that we're still seeing today, as to why they have not scheduled it, but it is still active. You can still view the various community impact statements and communications from the public, as well as the transmittal from the Arts Parks Committee, where it was approved on a 2-to-1 vote. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, our council supported it. We did a CIS on it, and so I was just curious as to where that stood at this point.
Councilman Monica Rodriguez refuses to move on it. She just doesn't want to do anything with it, and it's no secret. Everybody knows.
Okay, so we'll get comments from the public. Gwen.
Hi, in regards to this, Joe, could you tell me the state park ranger system, the national park ranger system, and other cities within California, how many rangers actually carry guns and are trained in that? And with that, the rules of the rangers for the Los Angeles cities, it sounds quite surprising that it's more in enforcement and training in enforcement and emergency than outreach. How much of the role for the rangers is outreach and goodwill and education, and how much of it is actually trying to defend yourself from harm? But what the main point would be, how many other systems, city, state, and federal, especially the national park system, carry guns at the current moment? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Both are really good questions. First of all, our we have interpretive rangers, and all of our rangers, when I mentioned earlier that they have to have degrees in zoology, geology, and stuff like that, it's because we have a component of education, not just in the park systems, but in the schools as well. So we do the nature walks, we do education, our rangers do field trips, overnight camping with with younger crowds to teach them about nature and all that. So a lot of it has to do with education, but the demand on the ranger over the years has developed to where the city council and city government is now asking us to do law enforcement work, and that's why our rangers go through a police academy to get post certified, so that we can make arrests, we can write citations. But that demand came from the city council several years ago before I even got here. So that's why they're going through there. Now, our park rangers, and I've done research to get us up to get us armed. I've done research in the entire state, and I've also reached out to New York, Chicago, Detroit, Philadelphia, San Diego, in regards to their park ranger programs. So outside of the federal park rangers and the state park rangers, they're the only ones that are armed in the state. However, they also go through a police academy, which requires them which they have to go through in order to be post certified and be law enforcement officers, just like our rangers. Other cities do have ranger programs: Sacramento, San Diego, Burbank, Glendale. However, they're not law enforcement officers. They go through no law enforcement training. Their jobs are basically what our job was, back in the 70s, just minor education stuff. They actually go out and help, trim trees in the parks, and just do like maintenance stuff. We're the only park ranger program in the state of California that actually is asked by city government to do law enforcement within the city, and that's why we are post certified. An example, like the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, they don't have any rangers, but they have a park bureau. So they have 170 parks. They have 225 armed deputy sheriffs that patrol their park systems. In Glendale and Burbank, their police officers are in charge of policing the parks. That's true with San Diego, and in just to give you an example, New York, Central Park is not much larger than Griffith Park. They have 220 park rangers just assigned to Central Park. However, they are not required at all to do any type of enforcement work or firefighting. They have the New York Police Department. They have a branch which is called the Park Police, where they're armed. They're armed police officers or certified police officers that do the police in the parks. So our rangers, even though we are law enforcement officers, and about 80% of our work is related to law enforcement, and they respond to violent crimes every day, just like the Los Angeles Police Department does, but a much smaller scale, because our jurisdiction is the park system. So our rangers are the only park rangers in the entire state, outside of the federal state marshal park rangers, that are police officer certified.
Okay, Lori?
Hi, thank you. And thank you, Gwen, for the direction you were going on this. And I'm totally against arming the park rangers. And while the Northwest San Pedro Neighborhood Council voted for it, it was barely a vote. They were very much split on this issue. One of the reasons I'm against it is quite often it's targeting people who are experiencing homelessness in the parks. And when you start to approach people who are experiencing homelessness and possibly have some mental health issues, approaching them with weapons is going to be counterproductive. I am accepting of carrying non-lethal weapons, but I do not, when we start to have this type of society where we've got everybody carrying guns in the parks, I don't feel safe there anymore. And I'm totally against this. And I hope the city councils, when the new council is seated, will hold up not arming are park rangers. This is not, they're not law enforcement. And the fact that most park rangers across the country are not armed tells the story itself. So I just wanted to go on record that this is the wrong direction. Thank you.
Okay, first of all, I think you need to educate yourself on that particular topic. We don't target homeless people.
Oops. Okay.
I didn't say we target. I said most of the people in the parks that you would be approaching have been people experiencing homelessness.
Okay, next we're moving on. Ryan, you are up to bat. It's your turn.
Yeah, just real quick on the last item. For the record, the Northwest San Pedro Neighborhood Council did submit a CIS with 10 yay votes and 4 nay votes. I just wanted to point that out. But that aside, Melanie, I do want to thank you and also the entire Northwest San Pedro Neighborhood Council for putting this forum on tonight. I do apologize that I couldn't, be here at the start of the meeting. I was at another previously scheduled event, but I'm glad that I was able to make it for at least the thing I got here when LAPD was presenting. But just on behalf of the councilman and the council office, I just want to thank you guys, not just the neighborhood council, but the San Pedro community that's in attendance for taking time out of your busy schedules and, after work on a Thursday to be here to hear the information presented by our various city departments. It truly is appreciated. So thank you.
Ryan, were you going to present anything on the working group or no?
I do not have the most up-to-date information. I tried to get it from Gabby before she left, but I can chat with her tomorrow and then just send it to you and can have you disseminate it if you'd like.
Okay, no problem. I know some of the stuff that they did do that she had presented that they're looking at getting cameras out of the non-discretionary money that Joe has left over for the cameras for the Peck Park.
Yes, I do remember that. And I can follow up with her because that's a conversation she most likely had with the council member and our chief of staff herself. But I'll make a note of that and follow up with her tomorrow and then shoot you an email, okay?
Okay, sounds wonderful. Thank you. Lori? Lori, you have your hand up? Hello.
Thank you. I was waiting to be unmuted. Hey, Ryan, glad you're here. On that CD15 working group, they held a meeting initially and a lot of us were there. I know that Ray, Gwen, Melanie, myself were there. They did not have us sign in. They did not have a list of who attended that meeting. We got no follow-up information. And I found out later another meeting was held. I received no notification. So while I appreciate them putting the group together, there was no transparency to continue those meetings. So if that group is going to continue, I would appreciate getting notification so we can tell the whole community. And again, the people that were attending should have for sure been included in follow-up. I know you had nothing to do with it, Ryan. I'm just sharing that information.
Thank you, Lori. I'll relay that communication and concerns to Gabby, okay?
Gwen?
Hi, Joe, I'm sorry, you were muted for quite a while and you didn't finish your response, but I did have a follow-up question. I am concerned that that the Rangers for Los Angeles have been given a responsibility that is outside of most ranger systems in most states and at most levels of government. With that, do you believe that it would be better held, that the responsibilities of law enforcement would be better held by a different organization? And because my concern is that Rangers have always been a goodwill ambassador role. And it puts other rangers and other systems at threat if a large city like the city of Los Angeles starts to have armed rangers. What it causes is additional threat to those who are unarmed in other systems. So if your thoughts on that, if perhaps it would be better suited, the armed portion would be better suited for another. Sorry, yeah, thank you.
But what agency would you want to take over and police the parks? I mean, like, what are you referring to? Because whether it's the park rangers or another law enforcement agency, if, you know, the union right now is fighting for the rangers that if this doesn't happen, we're going to completely pull it out. They want to completely pull out of doing any law enforcement in the parks at all. And, you know, that means, you know, quality of life issues, drinking in public, the smoking, the you know, dog, you know, the violations that we get, the fights. You know, we're in a position now where we're asked to do this. We're asked to do this by city government. And if, you know, city government can't have it both ways. They can't say, hey, go approach a guy with a gun. Oh, by the way, you don't get a gun. Go approach a guy. You know, our rangers were just shot at on a very simple, you know, they were almost killed on a very simple situation where they approached a gang member and his girlfriend in the park for drinking. And when they approached them, the guy pulled out a gun and shot at both of the rangers. They're both lucky to be alive. So if you want LAPD in the parks, you know, first of all, they don't have the resources to do that, to police the parks. I mean, our response time in the parks or in the regional parks are about a minute or two, sometimes less than that. The LAPD, unfortunately, because of the big area that they cover and because all the violent crime that they cover, their response time could be anywhere from 5 to 7 minutes. And so I know that for a fact because I spent 34 years with LAPD. So, I mean, if there's a better way to police the parks, I can tell you this, that Chief Moore would never tell his officers, take off your guns and go police the parks. Never going to happen. And so you know, the rangers are being asked to perform law enforcement work, not just from city government, from the public. They want us out there. They want us protecting our parks, but you can't have it both ways. My concern is that I'm going to lose one of these rangers, and a family is going to lose their dad, going to lose their husband or wife, you know, their kids, because of the situation that we're working under right now. You just can't have it both ways. I mean, I'm more than willing to say, look, you don't want to arm us, then don't expect us to do, you know, the police work that you're asking us to do. I'm okay with that. But if you're going to ask us to do police work, if you're going to ask us to, you know, confront, you know, violence in a park, and there's no boundaries. I mean, the same thing that LAPD gets on the streets, we get parolees, we get, you know, very dangerous people that come to our parks, and there's no boundaries. There's no fences that say, hey, bad guys, stay out of the parks. Our parks, for the most part, our parks are safe, but there are many parks in the city that are not. And, you know, that's the concern that I have. I mean, if somebody can find a different way, if they want to put law enforcement officers, police officers in the park, can have at it. But that's not going to happen, you know, anytime in the near future because LAPD just doesn't have the staffing for it.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, we're gonna have to move on. So what we're going to do now is enter into general public comment. So that will be general comment from the public first. So does anybody have any general public comment? If so, raise your hand. No public comment at all from anybody?
That's for Sandy. It was for her birthday, right?
Huh? And reminder too, this is for non-agenda items. This is for about anything you can make a public comment on. It's not, so remind you of that it's about anything. Lori?
Oh, wow. Okay, sorry, it's taken a while to get the unmute button there. Thank you to everybody who worked so hard to put this together. Thank you for all the presenters. I'm not against the police. I hope I didn't come across that way. I am for protecting the safety of everybody. My main thing right now for today is the permit in the process. a little bit of the inconsistency. I see, we have a little cute pocket park near here, Harbor Highlands, and it's just getting torn up. And so we need a way to control that. Stop driving on the grass, tearing it up, parties that are way beyond, not enough trash cans there. So if there's something we can do.
Whoops. Something happened, Lori.
You hear me now?
Yeah, something happened.
You hear part of what I said?
Yeah, about the pocket park and the driving on it.
Okay, the mute button keeps going on and off. So I'm taking that personal, Vic. So, no worries. I think you got the message. I want to see Harbor Highlands Park have more consistent patrolling, and somehow we have to do something to keep people from driving across the grass, cutting the whatever they're cutting to get on there, removing the bollards. So I appreciate that. And again, appreciate everybody participating tonight. Thank you.
Okay, any other people in the public? Anybody else? Okay, John?
Okay, I have a question, and I should have said it at the time to the LAPD, and I think Paul Ulmer and I had a question on this before. Paul, I remember you telling me that when you guys, your police department goes on to the academy and everything,
Right.
that it's a very little percentage of people that become police officers. Can you explain to the panelists and the public on that?
Are you asking how many actually make it through the academy?
Yes.
Starting
Yes.
from the actual application process?
Correct. I think we talked, and I think you said usually got like 1,000 or a couple of thousand that go in, that applicants, but
Yeah, John, I can answer that question. So yeah, for every 100 applicants, we probably maybe get 2 to 5 out of 100 that actually can make it through the whole process. It's a very stringent background process, and it really does kind of weeds out a lot of folks. So for every 100 applicants that we do get, it's maybe 2 to 5 that we actually get through or get into the academy. So it is a very, very difficult process.
so based on a year's worth of school, how many do you think make it a year?
Right now we're graduating about 30 a month. Okay, and we're trying to run consecutive classes. So every month we have a class. So out of 13 deployment periods, it's 13 times 30. That's about how many folks that we're getting through. But right now, the way it's going, we're losing about 20 officers a month negative. So we have 30 folks coming through the academy, we're losing 50 people to retirements. So that's a net negative of 20 every single month. And that's we've been on that path for the last 2 years. We've lost almost 800 officers in the last 2 years since 2020. And that trend is continuing.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thanks. I just wanted to reflect on this meeting and the process. We set out in our planning meetings to try and put this meeting together. It's similar to events we've done in the past. I thank my fellow panelists and obviously the attendees from the public agencies and the people and the stakeholders in the public. I feel like this process of just a more in-depth, well-researched, better participated conversation is a very important thing, for the education and information of any individual stakeholder. It's kind of a demonstration that you have to do a little bit more homework, you have to do more legwork, you have to be more personally invested to get better results. And hopefully that whether it's through the neighborhood council or individual people, that the representatives of the public agencies are able to participate in these things, knowing that there's more things will happen than them just getting yelled at or them being asked why does this not work, or why am I unhappy with this situation, because it's almost always a very complicated answer, and therefore any solution, whether you're part of it or not, is going to be more involved and require more. So noticing something, speaking up about it is really just the introduction. And as I found out, just being on the neighborhood council with my fellow board members, that opens the door to a lot more phone calls and emails and conversations and things like this, which are ultimately worth it, even if they're just so that you understand the situation better. Not everything has a lever that you can reach from where you're standing, but if you don't stick your arm out there, if you don't go walk around, you're not going to find those things. And then when you do find that lever, it may take several people or several dozen or several thousand, so I would say if you're more interested in affecting policy in the parks, look at the commissioner, the board of commissioners meetings. That's speak to your mayoral candidates and to the mayor when elected. Let them know that who is on that board and their decisions about the parks are of personal importance to you, and find other people who are like-minded, and you have to communicate that and make it a regular topic to get any movement, because whether it's by design or by default, a lot of people will stay where they are if you don't give them a reason to move on these things. So this is hopefully the beginning of that. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Lydia, you had a question?
Yes, I did. I'd like to know if I could get the officer's name who gave the statistics on the academy.
Paul Umner and the Sergeant Manlove.
Okay, that's the name that's not on the screen. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so any more public comments? That being said, I'd like to thank the people that were part of the panel for our ad hoc committee for the Northwest San Pedro Neighborhood Council. It was a pleasure leading it and putting this together. We worked hard. We had a lot of meetings. And even with the best effort, we've realized how hard it is to get the city to attend some of these functions, unfortunately. Our hope is that you're able to gain a better understanding of how the different departments run regarding our parks, the process involved in permitting, and also enforcement. It's going to take time for change to happen, but working together, we can gain needed changes to help the community feel safer and keep our parks accessible and enjoyed by all. We just hope that this is a helpful step moving forward and a goal to safer, more usable parks. Thank you for coming, and this concludes the Harbor Area Recreation and Parks Public Safety Town Hall. We'd like to thank the panelists, and we are sending out action items in the next 45 days for follow-up and at 90-day intervals. This conversation is going to continue in the Public Safety Committee as well as the Issues Committee. We thank you again for attending, and hopefully this isn't the last of our town halls and our meetings. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.